It is time. You guys ready? We're going down. We're going to 1879. 1879. Serena, this is it. Today we're going to tell the tale of the infamous, famous, and legendary Battle of Isandlwana and the Anglo-Zulu War of 1879. As well as the story of the last king of Zululand, Cetshwayo Kampande. Sit back, guys. This one is going to be epic. You all ready? So it's been documented that one of the major shocks to British prestige in the 19th century is the infamous Battle of Isandlwana, the first large encounter between the Zulu and the British in 1879. The Zulu, numbering about 20,000 and armed with their traditional assegai iron spears, cowhide shields, muskets, and old rifles, pulled up an unexpected attack on the British troops numbering about 1,800. Though the British had far more sophisticated weapons, they could not overpower the Zulu warriors. Over 1,300 British troops were killed, and the Zulu lost about 1,000 men after the battle. The Zulu were led by their famous king, Cetshwayo Kampande, who had become a threat to British colonial interests. The last great ruler of an independent Zulu state, Cetshwayo assumed power of a state that had nearly declined during the reign of his father, Mpande. But his strong military skills and leadership, alongside his disciplined army of 40,000 to 60,000 men, helped bring the prestige of the Zulu state back. These and many other factors, including his defiance of British rule in southern Africa, would lead to the Zulu War of 1879. Years before the war, Britain had in 1843 succeeded the Boers as the rulers of Natal, which controlled Zululand, the neighboring kingdom of the Zulu people. The Zulu were a migrant people from the north who had come to southern Africa during the 17th century. At the time, the British took over Natal and Zululand in 1843. Cetshwayo's father, Mpande, had displaced Dingane in 1840, becoming a vassal of the new Boer Republic of Natal. With his father as king, Cetshwayo was closer to the throne, but he had to kill to make it. In 1856, he fought and killed his brother, Umbulazi, the eldest son of Mpande's second wife. Cetshwayo's older brother, Umtonga, fled Zululand 5 years after Umbulazi's death. Cetshwayo was subsequently seen by all as the de facto heir to Mpande. He formally ascended the throne when his father died in 1872. It was during this period that the British sought to create a South Africa Federation in the region, and could only do so by collapsing autonomous African nations. In 1878, Sir Henry Battle Frere, British High Commissioner for South Africa, tried to force Cetshwayo to disband his powerful army of 60,000 men and give up land. The result was Britain's invasion of Zululand in 1879. The Zulu would hand the British a resounding defeat at Isandlwana, but the British in the end emerged victorious over the Zulus at the Battle of Kambula. So let me tell you a bit of how it all unfolded. You guys want to hear about the battle itself? Let's do it. At 11 o'clock in the morning of January the 22nd, 1879, a troop of British scouts chased a group of Zulus into the valley of Ingwembeni in Zululand. The scouts stopped dead in their tracks when they saw what the valley contained. Sitting on the ground in total silence were 20,000 Zulu warriors. It was an astonishing sight. The battle that followed this remarkable discovery was a disaster. It hadn't meant to be this way. When the High Commissioner for Southern Africa, Sir Henry Battle Frere, came up with the flawed idea of annexing the British-friendly kingdom of Zululand into a greater South Africa by force of arms, he presumed Zulus armed with spears, clubs, and shields would be no match for the mighty British army. Without bothering to seek the permission of the British government, Frere issued the order to attack the lands ruled by King Cetshwayo, a reasonable, thoughtful ruler who had regarded the British as his friends, until Frere cynically engineered him into a position of being unable to accept Frere's unreasonable demands. When Cetshwayo failed to agree to Frere's ultimatum to disband his army, Frere grasped his chance to invade. Chosen to lead the invasion was Frederick Tisiger, the second Baron Chelmsford. Lord Chelmsford massively underestimated how many men he would need to take Cetwayo's territory. So confident was Chelmsford of an easy victory that he took with him a mere 7,800 troops. His plan was to invade Zululand with 3 columns of infantry, artillery, and native cavalry, with each column heading off through different sections of Zululand to engage Cetwayo's army. The ultimate goal was the capture of Ulundi, Cetwayo's capital. Against official military policy, Chelmsford did not order the camp to be lagered. The practice of circling the column's support wagons to create a makeshift fort behind which the troops could form a defensive position should an attack occur. Instead, on the morning of the 22nd, Chelmsford left just 1,300 troops guarding the camp as he took a sizable number of his men off to attack what he thought was the main Zulu army. In reality, the small number of Zulu warriors that Chelmsford's scouts had spotted and reported back to the general were a ruse devised by Cetwayo's commanders to draw out Chelmsford and then attack his forces from behind with the bulk of the main Zulu army. The ruse worked, and the overconfident aristocrat marched 2,800 men away from the camp, splitting his forces into 2. While Chelmsford was off chasing an imaginary Zulu army, the real one moved into the valley of Ingwebeni. When the attack came, it came quickly. The minute the encampment at Ingwebeni was discovered by British scouts, the entire Zulu army sprang into action. The plan was instantly changed from attacking Chelmsford's rear to attacking the camp at Isandlwana. The legendary Martin Henry breech-loading rifle was more than a match. At first, the British firing line held the attack off with considerable ease, with help from 2 mountain guns of the Royal Artillery. The legendary Martin Henry breech-loading rifle was more than a match for an army attacking with spears and clubs and a firing rate of 12 rounds per minute. The experienced soldiers of the 24th Foot were able to hold the central column of the Impi at bay, inflicting heavy casualties on the Zulu side, forcing men to retreat behind Isandlwana Hill to shelter behind the hails of shells and bullets. But unfortunately for the soldiers holding the line against the Zulu column, the horns of the Impi began to make headway against the less experienced opposition. Faced with sudden death or escape, the men began to leave the battlefield before they could be fully encircled and cut off by the Impi. The final stand was a brutal affair. British soldiers stood back to back, furiously stabbing away with bayonets as wave upon wave of Zulu warriors thrust at them with their spears and battered them with clubs. Screams rang out across the camp as soldiers were stabbed and clubbed to death where they stood. As the enemy melted away, taking rifles, ammunition, artillery, and supplies with them, the extent of the massacre became clear. Of the 1,700 men tasked with defending the camp, 52 soldiers were killed, 88 officers were killed, 806 rank-and-file soldiers and 471 African troops had also been killed. On the Zulu side, an estimated 2,000 lay dead. The Battle of Isandlwana was and remains to this day the worst defeat ever inflicted by a native force on the British Army. Isandlwana was a humiliating defeat for a British government that hadn't even ordered the attack in the first place. When news reached home about the massacre and the valiant defeat of Rock's Drift, the British public were baying for blood, and the government duly obliged their vengeful subjects, and in just under 6 months, an enlarged invasion force had conquered the Zululand. The kingdom would remain a British protectorate for the next 18 years until it was annexed and absorbed into Natal in 1897. And what of Cetwayo, the courageous king who stood up to the might of the British Empire and won the day? What happened to him? Well, he was captured following the Battle of Ulundi on the 4th of July 1879 and was first exiled to Cape Town and then to London. His gentle nature charmed many in London, and his treatment by the battle frere and Chelmsford began to be roundly condemned by many in polite society. He was brought back to Cape Town in 1883 to rule over part of his former territory, but soon he had to fight another dangerous rival, his cousin Zibebu, in a civil war that eventually forced Cetwayo out of Zululand. Cetwayo fled to native Zulu reserve and died on February 8, 1884. Official cause of his death was given as a heart attack, but the Zulu believed he had been poisoned. And that was the end of the last independent Zulu king. 3 years after his death, the British formally annexed Zululand, and in 1897 it became part of Natal, which joined the Union of South Africa in 1910. Done. What do you guys think?